Morning, everyone. And I welcome you to this webinar here hosted at the Institute for Security Studies here in Pretoria. Welcome to a warm Pretoria and welcome to our audience joining us online. My name is Cheryl Frank. I'm a project manager here at the Institute for Security Studies. I work at the Justice and Violence Prevention Program. I manage the Anti-Corruption and Accountability project here at the ISS. So welcome to this hybrid seminar. We have people in the room, thank you for coming, and people online. And this seminar is called Appointing Capable Leaders for a Safer South Africa. How can the country ensure that its law enforcement agencies are headed by the best possible leaders? Okay, quite a question we've grappled with variously and severally over many years, and we've been in some of the same debates. So we're sitting in a situation in the country where we have many leadership positions in criminal justice agencies vacant or becoming vacant in the coming months. And we're grappling with these questions of who should be appointed in these positions? How should they be appointed? What are we looking for amongst the people that we're wanting to appoint into these positions? And we're asking a lot of these people because the country's crime situation requires that we have capable people to respond to these unusual circumstances. So we will have a moderated discussion today, so for about 45 minutes, and I will introduce you to our panelists soon. Note that Chatham House rules do not apply because this is being webcast, so it's happening in on the internet, and so nothing you say is going to be confidential. And we would like you to hold your questions until we're ready to take them. You're welcome to ask questions in the room and to ask questions online in the chat, and those will be forwarded to me. We are grateful for the support of the Hans Seidel Foundation for this event, and also grateful for the support of the ISS Partnership Forum, which allows us to do our work. And the members of the Partnership Forum are the Hans Seidel Foundation, the European Union, the Open Society Foundations, and the governments of Denmark, Ireland, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden. So having said that, I would like to introduce you to our panelists who will help us grapple with this question. Dr. Godfrey Lebeya, I have to remember to call you Dr. Lebeya these days. He recently retired from the position of head of the Hawks, or the Directorate Priority Crime Investigation, the CI, and a position he's held since 2018. He has had a long career in policing, and during that time also served as National Commissioner a few times, acting or Deputy National Commissioner and acting National Commissioner. Lawson Naidu is the Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, HASAC, as we all know it. Lawson has 25 years of experience in political, parliamentary, business, and the NGOs. 25 years only, Lawson. I'm sure it's more. And then Bernard. Bernard Egger is retired from the Bavarian State Office of Crime Investigation. Retired as Assistant Detective Chief Constable. Upon his retirement in 2023, headed the Department of Central Criminal Police Services for over 10 years. Is also serving here in South Africa as an advisor on various projects. So thank you all for joining us and bringing your different perspectives to this discussion. So I thought we'd just start with a contextual question. And really it is about, the criminal justice is a complex business to begin with. but I feel that we seem to be in much more turmoil as things stand right now. And I don't know if it's more turmoil than usual. It just seems to be, maybe. So, Lawson, maybe you can highlight some of the current developments relating to the criminal justice system that make this question of leadership so important and so crucial for us going forward.
Thank you. It's a tricky question because I think, yes, we're in a crisis at the moment. I think it's quite clear in the criminal justice sector as a whole, but it's not a new one. One can go back 15, 20 years. The time of Jackie Selebi being the National Commissioner of Police, the contestation between Scorpions, the DSO, and the police. These are ongoing issues that we've had to confront, and they've never been dealt with holistically, systemically, to identify what the real problem is. We simply go on, point someone else, and just assume or hope that things are going to get better. Clearly, they haven't, and yes, we now find ourselves in a situation where the level of open infighting in SAPS, for example, is a huge cause for concern for all of us. Not just for the safety of South Africans, which is the primary concern. The primary role of these agencies is to make us all feel safer. But it also has a huge impact on the country more broadly, on the economics of the country, our ability to attract investment, to create jobs, to build South Africa. Crime, corruption, and I think particularly in recent times, the escalation of organized crime. And the kind of the modus operandi of what one calls high-level corruption, which we saw exposed, for example, in the Zondo Commission, has shifted. It's now become much more syndicates operating than ever before. So these law enforcement agencies need to be able to adapt to these new challenges that they face and how to deal with it. And then, obviously, in that context, leadership of these institutions is fundamentally important. Stability of leadership, effective and ethical leadership in these organizations becomes yet what we see. And to use SAPS as an example, you see factions within the South African Police Service leadership, almost replicating the kind of factions that we've become accustomed to seeing in our politics within political parties. Those same sort of similar factions seem to exist in these institutions, and that's something that we've got to address.
Dr. Lebeya, could you also just reflect on what you're seeing as the struggles in our current context that we need to grapple with, and our leaders in the criminal justice system?
Thank you very much. I think what is important is to note that in society, there will always be some individuals who would like to do something that is not appreciated by the majority. And part of those is the commission of crime. Do we believe that at some stage we will reach a situation where there is no crime in the country? It would appear that we have had the experience of crime all the time. It is part of society. So it becomes a concern if it appears that we are not about to be winning. If you look at the correctional services facilities and say that, but they are all overflowing, but individuals are still committing crime. So that becomes a concern. So it is the issue of crime that is happening that we get worried and say, what is that which needs to be done? So therefore you need the machinery to be ready. That's why you need to ensure that vacant positions are filled, that those who are supposed leading the fight against crime are readily available and accessible.
Bernard, could you also reflect on this question of, the challenge, anywhere in the world, and particularly your experiences in Germany, the challenge of what is going on in society, and then how the context that you're expecting leaders to grapple with?
Thank you. Actually, I think these are two questions. How and for the first one, what's going on in society and what's our part as a police? I think the condition for that is that we are, in general, very close with our society, not just in a crime situation, certain crime situation. If something develops, we have to be very close all the time with our society, and this requires a lot of things. Like, for example, maybe we come later to that when we talk about leadership. Transparency. Transparency is nowadays key to gain trust and to be part of society. Otherwise, you are beside the society. So this is very important. When it comes to leadership, I think we also go in more detail in that. Of course, the vacancy you mentioned is very important. That shouldn't be there because there are certain messages if they have so long vacancies. We come back to that, I guess. And the messages you know better than I do. And the other thing is, as important as it is to have the right leader, but you have create a culture in your organization. Even the hero of the heroes, if he would be appointed and as chief of big organization, he wouldn't be able if he doesn't have all the support from the government and also the support from his own organization. So to create a culture of leadership, to create a culture of service understanding, and to create a culture of trust. I think it's very important within the organization and towards the society and within the society.
Okay, we're going to come back to this question of culture and you know what leaders need to achieve in their institutions. But Lawson, you started on a conversation about the role. I want to talk a bit about the role of politics in leadership appointments, because you know we sometimes talk about the technicalities of that process and get caught up in the technicalities of it, but it is encompassed by a whole political framework. So if it seems obvious that parties and individuals in power would want to appoint leaders that align with their particular views or political objectives, so leadership capability may not be the sort of primary determining factor of some of our appointments. Would you map out for us how you think this factor of politics will affect our future appointments, given what we're seeing currently?
Well, you know, I think again, if we look back, there were clear examples during the state capture era of those kinds of political appointments in key institutions at the NPA, at the Hawks. Dr. Lebeya's predecessor was appointed by former President Zuma. You know, and we saw the impact that had on those institutions, on the Hawks and the NPA in particular. You know, the impact has taken a long time to recover from. You know, and then you know, we probably can say that we're not yet there in terms of either the Hawks or the NPA. Progress has been made subsequent with the subsequent leadership that came in, but it's that political those political appointments. So regardless of the kind of process that's set out, and we'll come to the process in a moment, but it's about you know, acknowledging that at a particular time, you know, the political climate in the country was very different. We had a majority party with a very strong majority, which could use that political majority in parliament, in the executive, to push through decisions. That landscape has now changed. Parliament is much more contested now, you know, after last year's elections at a national level. You know, I don't think that we're going to see a majority party in South African politics for some time. Coalitions are here to stay. And that's going to mean that how those coalitions are managed, the impact that they have on these appointment processes and who ultimately gets appointed has become much more complex now. And so we're going to have to adapt to that and see how that works. But, you know, I think, you know, I made the point about transparency. Transparency has been critically important because I think some of the more recent appointments that we've seen, for example, when Advocate Batoy was appointed as NDPP, was a very open public process, which I think lent credibility to the process. For the first time, we understood what we were looking for in someone who's going to lead the NPA. Levels of public confidence maybe, were higher as a result of that kind of process. But we've got to look at those issues and look at how, as you say, politics plays a role. And sometimes people say, well, politicians shouldn't be involved in this. Well, if not them, then who? They are our elected representatives. We put them there. We've got to give them the authority to do this. But crafting the kind of process, the criteria of what we're looking at, the characteristics of people that assume these positions is critically important. So, I think we have to accept that politicians will play a role, but they need perhaps to be guided by some independent advice whilst they do that.
So there's a different version of this in the police, Dr. Lebeya, because we have those ministerial regulations that allow for the Minister of Police to make to influence the appointment of people in the policing system. The placement of senior commanders, for example. What's your view on that sort of awkward relationship?
Yeah, I think that firstly, the appointment in the government departments have to be regulated and governed somehow. You have got various laws that govern the appointments. First, you start with the Constitution, which will indicate who is supposed to appoint at what level. As an example, you will find that the Constitution will say that the state president shall appoint a person to be the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, and then they put full stop. Then the next question is, how is this process supposed to be done? Then that is when you have got to be going to other laws and say, which other law guide this? Or how is this supposed to be happening? Must the state president just come in the morning and say, I have decided today to appoint so-and-so? Will we be happy? The National Development Plan of 2030 shall have advice, or how is this process supposed to be done? The selection of the National Commissioner and the Deputy National Commissioner, so that those appointees can earn respect from the public. Then you have got the Public Service Administration. They guide how appointments are to be done. Then they put the regulations, employment regulations, or it actually begin to direct, or how is this process supposed to be done. Then you go to the different departments, like in the South African Police Service, you will have the South African Police Service Act, which indicate how are appointments to be done. As an example, you'll find that Section 17, capital letter CA of the Police Act will say that the minister shall appoint the national head of the DPCI in concurrence with the cabinet, put full stop. How is this supposed to be done? So then you have got the regulations that are supposed to be governing this. Then you shall have got to be a national instruction that actually try to assist. But where there is silence, that is where you begin to have some problems. The law itself is supposed to be fine and say that the minister should appoint the national head. But then there must be guidance as to when does the minister step in and do that appointment. I would have suggested, as my colleague is saying, that put a panel together, an independent panel, to go and do the selection, the sifting and the like they shall have done interviewing the National Director of Public Prosecution. Once they have done that process, they can then recommend to the minister and say that we have done this process after the advertisement and the like. We recommend that you appoint so and so because this meet all the requirements. The person is credibility is beyond reproach, then the qualification and the experience, all those required in the advert are complied with. So it is a matter that follow the proper processes. Where there is a loophole, fill those gaps so that people are guided. They don't just do because they believe that this is how it's supposed to be done.
So you say that there is where those gaps are creating the space for interference and
Yes, yeah, those gaps, you see that as an example, I will say in 2009, when the Hawks was created, they just said that the minister shall appoint a person to head the Hawks as the Deputy National Commissioner of the Police. Then the minister do that, and then we are called, and then they appoint. No process is done, no advertisement, no selection process, but they complied with the law. That is how the law is written. Then you have got the amendment in 2012, which brings a little bit of changes and say that the appointment shall be done by the minister, but in concurrence with cabinet, but certain things need to be done. The person who is appointed must be appointed on a contract basis, not renewable for a specific period and the like. They put the nitty-gritties that this is how it should be done. But then you still need the details for it. When does the minister start exercising this? Does the minister just have to come and say that, no, I have decided that this is the candidate that I want? What informs that? So you need to be putting some mechanism in place to guide that process and say that this is the process to be followed. Usually the regulations cover those gaps.
Right. Bernard, maybe you want to give us some insight into how politics feature in appointments in Germany, particularly in police appointments.
Yeah, if I start there at the end of the process, at the decision, of course, but like in Bavaria, it's no question, because it's a chain of leadership. The minister is the highest leader of the police, and he's responsible for the police, and it's a chain of responsibility of leadership. So of course there is political influence, because they, at the end of the day, they are responsible what happens. So this in Bavaria, that is no question. I think two things they already mentioned. You have to have a clear profile. Who do you want? That's very important, and a clear, transparent process. And this has been in place before you are looking for someone. It has also be a part of a culture of an organization, that you know what's a requirement process, and that you know what we're looking for. And it and also, like, we have a longer process, how you create sources of possible applicants you have, because all our leadership comes out of the organization, and there won't be any leader coming out of the blue. It's a long process. You go step of leadership. Our highest leaders, the commissioners, they all come out of a source of leaders they are already experienced, like for 15, 20 years. And then the best of them, I would say, if you have 5 applicants, they all would do the job of. At the end, one only can promote one. So this process is very important, I guess. And then this is public relation, of course, but every time when somebody is introduced, the minister will be there and say, okay, this is the best one I choose because of he did that. So really an open process on that. It's very important. And it's also important then for the one who is chosen. If somebody comes out of the blue, he's questioned from the very beginning. Why him? What quality does he have? So already, if he's very good, his start is much more difficult than somebody who is pretty clear why we elected or why we choose him. But at the end, the minister has to. And also
So it's a final decision.
In our process, actually it's more like the minister decides under the commissioners, like so three ranks down. The minister decides, and the commissioners, they are decided by the board of the ministers. So the minister brings it up, and then the board of all the ministers decide at the very end about commissioners.
So I'd like to just continue on this issue of, you talked a bit about profile of the person. And just to shift gear a bit, I think, I'm really interested in your views about the kinds of people that we're looking for. And I don't mean what their skills are and capabilities are. I mean, think about this, the problems that they set themselves up to deal with, right? The lives that they choose to lead by putting their hands up to do this job. These thankless jobs in the criminal justice system. You just take the Shamila Batoya's appointment and the regular battering she takes, the demands, the questions, the accusations. A national director sets themselves up for that job. They choose to take on that job. I mean, what kinds of people are we looking for? Who are these magical people who want to do these jobs? Lawson?
Well, they've got to be a little bit crazy to want to take on jobs in the first place, I was to say. No, that's a critical thing, and it's about, coming back to this issue mentioned about someone who wants to serve. You're a public servant at the end of the day. You're there to serve the people of South Africa, to do your best in these institutions. I think an important point to highlight in terms of the kind of person we're looking at, these are incredibly large and complex organizations. You need to have incredible managerial skills. Apart from the leadership skills, the hard management skills. SAPS employs 180,000 people? The NPA is a complex organization. It's not just their office in Silverton, they have a presence at every court in the country. That's a complex organization that ultimately the NDPP is managing and is responsible for. So you need incredible people to lead and change these complex organizations. And sometimes I don't think we fully appreciate the pressures that those leaders come under. We simply think that, take the NPA as an example, there's a case is lost in court in the Eastern Cape, which the national office of the NPA has very little to do with, but the buck stops there. So, how those systems within the NPA operate, what kind of checks and balances are there to ensure that cases that do go to court are ready for prosecution in court? Those are the complex issues behind the scenes that we don't see. But those are the issues that have to be grappled with. And I think just to come back to or touch on the issue of criteria, in a lot of the legislation, be it the Police Act or the Constitution, we talk about people who are fit and proper for the job. Well, somebody's got a law degree, they tick the box, they're a South African citizen, they've had 10 years of experience. Okay. But people forget the last part of that thing is that it's about having those skills and experience that is appropriate for the office that is being considered. You easily tick those boxes, but can you actually lead a complex organization like this?
Yeah.
And we often ignore that. When looking at, again, sorry, I'm sorry to keep picking on the NPA,
Yeah.
but people say, well, here's a really good advocate, they should be the NDPP, without making that connection. You may be a fantastic advocate, but can you run a complex organization?
Yeah,
that's the question we need to be asking.
Yeah, but let's stick with that for a bit, Dr. Lebeya. We've used words when we talked about this. The seminar and in previous seminars that we've talked in Lawson, we use words like we're looking for capable leaders. They need to be credible. They need to be trustworthy. They need to be accountable. And I would also add courageous to that list, right? If we're talking about the leadership attributes, we should be seeking for these very senior positions within the criminal justice system. So, Dr. Lebeya, would you agree with my list? And more importantly, you know, how in the context of the agencies such as the DPCI and the SAPs, should we be going about finding these people that meet all these criteria?
Thank you very much. I agree with your list, but I can even package it slightly different into three main categories. That is, the first one is an individual whose conduct is beyond reproach. And then that is the first one. And then the second one should be a qualification. And then the last one will be the relevant experience. So starting with the first one, is the person that you appoint in this key position must obviously be somebody that you do not doubt. So that the moment this person steps into the office, we are not hearing about this and that. Say, but why didn't we hear about this before we make this decision? Which means that people should be vetted. Then vetting becomes important, that before you appoint an individual in a position, have you vetted this individual properly by a proper institution, not just hearing from the street, people beginning to say, but that one can't do this one, as if they are officers to vet others when they can't do that. There are legislated institutions that can vet, and when they finalize, they give you a certificate. People taking this position should have been vetted up to the level of top secret security clearance. You must produce that certificate, say that this is what I'm having. I have been certified that I am that individual who is currently beyond reproach. And that current certificate is the one that should convince us that, yeah, this one is fine. If you don't have, there will always be a question mark. The second one is the qualifications. Usually, most of the advertisement, they will indicate what level of qualification do you need. And then I think in this higher position, we have in the country sufficient pool of individuals that have got the necessary qualification. They normally say up to NQF level 7 if you come on this. Not that the matriculants can't do it, but you usually expect somebody that is going to instill courage in others, that it helps to study. So qualification is one of those that I'm looking at. The last one is the relevant experience, which is what my colleague have said, that you can't come out of the blue. I'm running a bottle store, you come and say that, no, tomorrow you run the police.
That's a true story.
I think that you may find that the experience on that individual sit elsewhere, and then it's not relevant in the particular environment. First, you say that you must come and lead the people who must go and effect arrest. But you first don't understand what arrest is, or how to secure the attendance of an accused person in court, the various methods. So it becomes very, very difficult. So the experience is so important. And usually within the organization, who have got more than 30 years and the like, they have got sufficient experience. You should be having sufficient pool of those that on a day-to-day basis, you groom them to become the successor. That is how the succession plan also works. Say that I'm not putting you to be the one who succeeds here, but I put all this on this layer, that if there is a need to move to the next layer, part of you are part of those candidates that should be considered. So those three things for me are key in doing this process.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
Because that's a really important point that Dr. Lebeya makes, and it's about the institutional culture of continuous development of people across the system, so that they can move upwards. And you create that level of leadership that when the time comes that you're looking for the head of the organization, you've got an adequate pool of people that have been adequately with sufficient experience, but have also been adequately trained to move up to the next level. And that's the kind of culture that needs to be installed. Whereas, what we said earlier with the kind of factions that we see, especially in the SAPs, is, people being bumped out of the way rather than being developed and made ready for the next step.
Yeah. Bernard, your thoughts on my list of criteria, the sorts of people that we're looking for in these leadership appointments? So I read my list again.
I don't remember all of them, but they're totally white. We came from the same leadership seminar.
Yes.
I don't know if you had teamwork. Teamwork is very important also. And then when it comes to the highest leadership, I mentioned this already about transparency. It's all about transparency. And if I may also say something about the pressure
Yes.
people will take. I've learned here a lot, and I've learned that the pressure they have here is no comparison to Bavaria or to Germany. There is no comparison. It's you can't compare it. But on the other hand, of course, also we have pressure. But the thing is, what you all said about what we have in common, you need to have experienced leaders, and they go step by step. And what's important, when we finish university after the long process of evaluation, like 10 to 15 years of experience just working. So people like our commissioners, most of them, they know what it means to work in the street, to be a bodyguard for the politicians, to be an investigator. But when you come from university, it's not that you are the big guy. It's then the pressure starts. And the higher you get, the more evaluation you get and the more pressure you get. So there is no commissioner who hasn't been a deputy before that. And so the steps are not so great. And everybody decides. There are people that decide, I don't want to become commissioner I don't want to become a deputy. I want to stay where I am, because they feel the pressure. But the ones who are ready to take the pressure, they're ready for the next step. Again, it's nothing. They jump in cold water. They know what it means. And between deputy and commissioner, it's not such a big difference if you do this right. So this going up steps. As I said, I'm not the big guy. If I'm a deputy, I have more pressure than before. And this is also important, that not on a certain stage of the career, I'm the big guy. I'm not responsible anymore. I'm just carrying my rank around. That's not the point. The point is you have more pressure. You have more. You are more evaluated. And you are much more responsible for people and for the situation. So you go also with this pressure, you go step by step.
Okay. So I want to move on to talking about appointments processes, right? So I think maybe Dr. Lebeya, we start with you, because your former position as head of the DPCI is vacant since May, I think, since you left. So could we just reflect on your appointment process when you were appointed in 2018, and then maybe tell us a little bit about how you think that would need to be built on and improved for this next appointee?
All right. I think that my appointment in 2018 started with the advertisement. First, the position became vacant when the person that was appointed previously in 2015, the appointment was declared null and void. So then it means that the position became vacant. Normally, the act is crafted in such a way that when there is a vacancy in the position of national head, the deputy national head should be appointed to act. So the act is clear. The deputy was acting. So the post was advertised on the 14th of January, 2018. And then obviously for some reasons, it was withdrawn and re-advertised on the 24th of April, 2018. I applied in both occasions. So I thought that I still have energy to come and participate in the fight against criminality. So I was amongst the 45 candidates that applied, saying that we are available to come and serve in this position. So shortlisting took place by the appointed selection panel. Obviously, they shortlisted, and then I think one candidate withdrew after the shortlisting. Those who were left participated. We went to Cape Town for the interviews. We competed. And then thereafter, I think that after the minister shall have selected or who is the possible candidate, he has to consult cabinet. And then with the concurrence of cabinet, on the 24th of May, 2018, they decided that they want to appoint me. And in terms of the law, when you appoint somebody to be the head of the national, the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, a report must be made to Parliament within 14 days. Indeed, on the 24th, they did that report to Parliament. And on the 1st of June, which is the date that the appointment was to start, I had to take an oath before the DPCI judge. That is the oath prescribed in terms of the Police Act, that before anyone can work in the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation must take an oath of office. And I also had the top secret security clearance certificate because that is one of the requirements. Mine was valid because before I left as the Deputy National Commissioner in 2016, I had top secret security clearance certificate, so it was still valid. So I had all of those requirements. My qualification, I think that obviously I tried to read everything that is there until I was declared a doctor that maybe this is where you can study up to. So the requirement seems to have been there. So I think that with regard to the selection process, they followed what is said in the book, but there were just a few things that they needed to be finalizing, which are administrative in nature, but which maybe I will highlight on those. So what I'm saying is that that is how the position was filled. And one of the requirements is that this position, unlike the one in 2009, when they filled it in 2009, it was permanent until you reach retirement age. But after the amendment of 2012, the appointment is on contract basis. It's not until you reach your retirement age. They have got to decide at the time of appointment that we appoint you for a period not less than 7 years, but not exceeding 10 years. And it's not renewable. You mustn't expect that it will be renewed. So they decide, and that period must be determined at the time of appointment. Mine was determined for 7 years, which is why I had to be exiting on the 31st of May, 2025. That's why I'm outside. By December already, 2024, I knew that my term is coming to an end. So I sensitized the ministers and said that my term is coming to an end. You need sufficient time to select my successor. May you start the process of advertisement and those selection, which I think in February, the 21st, they advertised the position in order to start the selection process. For some reason, in June, they found that maybe the pool is not sufficient, so they re-advertised with a closing date of being the 20th of June. And I think that they should be currently in the process of selection of who should be the successor. But when I raised this in December, I thought that there is sufficient time to do the selection so that I can hand over the baton. So I had to do my legacy report and hand it over to my deputy and say that, hey, there is the legacy report of the things that we have done and the things that we couldn't do, which can assist whoever is coming and say that these are the areas that my predecessor did not achieve. And then I think I can take it from where he left.
Also, maybe you could speak to the appointment processes then, the current appointment processes in the NPA. Okay, so I think maybe just speak to the leadership issues in the NPA given retirements and departures and so on, and then speak to some of the processes for replacing the people that are about to leave.
Yeah, well, maybe let me start the other way around and deal with the processes and then come back to it, because I think it flows from what Dr. Lebeya has just said. When you have fixed term contracts, non-renewable, you know when somebody is leaving. You know the day you appoint them, you know when they leave. So you have 7 or 10 years to plan, but we never seem to plan.
Yes.
So to the NPA, we know that Advocate Batoy will leave at the end of January, I think it is next year. She will have served, I think, only 7 years. In the past, the appointment of the NDPP is made by the president acting as the head of the national executive. That's clear. The last, previously, sometimes we literally thought that the president woke up one day with an idea of appointing someone as the NDPP, because that's the way it seemed to happen. But in 2018, we had a different process. The president appointed a panel to assist and advise him, a panel from the legal profession and so on, of esteemed people to, call for nominations, shortlist, interview candidates in public, and make a recommendation to the president, which is what happened. And we ended up with Advocate Batoy as the preferred candidate, which the president accepted and ultimately appointed her. And I think many of us, certainly many of us in civil society, expected it's the same president, he will follow the same process. Even though many of us argued immediately after Cheryl Batoy was appointed that then there needs to be an amendment to the NPA Act to ensure that this process is followed in future and that it's not left up to the discretion of whoever happens to be the president at the time to put in whatever process or no process. So we expected that would happen. And then a few weeks ago, when the president submitted his progress report on the implementation of the Zondo Commission recommendations to Parliament, there's a little paragraph in that report, which I want to read out. It says, the commitment to enhance transparency in the NDPP appointment process through legislative amendments has been delayed due to constitutional considerations raised by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. However, a possible amendment to the NPA Act is now being considered that would provide for a transparent and open process to be determined by the President through the development of, quote, practice and guidelines for the appointment process of the NPA leadership, so going beyond the NDPP. Then it goes on to say, this is expected to be completed by November 2025. The matter remains time sensitive as the term of the current NDPP, Advocate Cheryl Batoy, ends in early 2026. Now, where does that leave us? So now we don't know what the process is going to be. We don't know when that process is going to happen. And the point I've made previously is this is the first time in the history of the NPA where you've had an opportunity for a managed handover from one NDPP to the next. All of the others have been removed either by court order or by Parliament, sudden departures. Here you've had an opportunity as Dr. Lebeya said, a handover report, handover period, so that the other person comes in and is able to hit the ground running. All of that is now not going to be possible at the NPA. I mean, the possibility does exist. I'm not sure whether Advocate Butoi would like me to say this, but there is a possibility that the president could extend her tenure by up to 2 years. I'm not sure that she would want that, but but we're in this situation now where it looks unlikely from where I'm sitting that we're going to have an NDPP in place by January 2026.
And we have the situation of the deputy national directors as well.
Well, that's why I was going to come on to that, because it's not just the NDPP. There's, in cohort of the deputy national directors of public prosecutions, there are also several of them that are going to be leaving next year. So that whole, almost the whole leadership, national leadership of the NPA is going to be gone. And there's been no thinking about a managed succession plan and managed transition.
So I suppose the question is, us having been saying this for the last 5 years and having had multiple seminars on this question about senior leadership appointment processes, about and particularly the kind of going back to this question of the kinds of people that we want in those jobs. And the processes to find those people, we're still finding that weak and uncertain. And so do we expect that there might be, how do we expect this process to play out then, Lawson, for the National Director?
Well, I think certainly, as many of us have been arguing for years, the NPA Act needs to be amended to institutionalize this open, competitive process that we would all like to see, and it needs to happen in perhaps in some of the other law enforcement agencies as well. But we're in a situation now. Even if this process that the president has mentioned in this report continues, I do not see because there's no detail yet what his concerns are about what constitutional considerations there are about the previous process. I can't see any, because the president still makes the appointment. The president surely has the discretion to take advice from any panel or any individual that he chooses. I cannot see where a constitutional challenge to the 2018 process comes into play. So I think we must still lobby the president to appoint a panel to select the next NDPP, and this can come into play, simultaneously, but it cannot be allowed to hold up that critical appointment. Again, as Dr. Lebeya said, we're sitting now with the Hawks not having had a header for 3-4 months now, and it may take another 3 or 4 months before we actually get someone.
Yeah. So maybe if we can just reflect, Bernard, in from as an outsider and with your experience in Germany, and the question of going back to the attributes, finding these transparent, credible, accountable people. Are the procedures sufficiently documented, you would say, and sufficiently effective at finding the right sorts of people? Because we find that maybe we have the systems, but we're not creating those systems, not produce the outputs we're looking for. And I'd like you to reflect on that just now.
Well, I find it interesting, but we agreed all at the beginning. There should be a process in place. I think this is the problem. There is no process in place. So this is a precondition. And what I'm hearing here, there is no process in place, transparent process, which is clear how to find it. And this is also then, it's the influence, like negative influence from politicians, is not as possible if there's a clear structure how it should go. I think this is missing what I'm hearing. We have a process, of course. You can change that. It's not made in stone, and it's developing. For example, before a couple of years before I was got appointed to get to university, now we have an assessment center. Where there's a board. 2 days, 20 or 25 years ago, But 30 years ago, it was different. After all this evaluation process, you had to go to the ministry for an interview. They called it an assessment center, but it was an interview.
Mm.
And that was like this or like this 30 years ago. So it also has to develop this process. But I think the process we have now, it's pretty good, but it's not like every year, every other year, look, does it still work? For example, you were talking about the big pressure. We have a lack now, or we're lacking of enough people who are applying for that process, because it's really 4 or 5 hard years, evaluation, and then you go to university, and then you're facing all this pressure and everything. So we are currently also looking at the process. Is it too hard because we don't have enough applicants anymore? So it's not made in stone. We always apply to the applicants. For example, one thing we figured, and we changed some things. We figured with this hard process, we are missing enough females, because it's exactly that age between, let's say, 28, 35 are going into that process. And as you all know, this is the time you maybe get married, you maybe get kids, and then you are for 1 or 2 or 3 years out of that process, and then you can't do it anymore with kids. So we changed a little bit on that, especially you can interrupt the process, for example, and adjust it to situation we have. But so far, I think, I thought about back my 47 years, I know there was actually not one commissioner who was suspended or who failed, really. Okay, better ones and different ones, but there was not one commissioner who was really the wrong person in the wrong place. So I think it's pretty sufficient. But it doesn't stay like forever. It's not that you have it and that's regulation for the next 20 years, because things are changing, people are changing, situations are changing. So you have to always adjust and look for better solutions. And we do this together with the whole board of the commissioners, the ministry. We have a psychological unit who is also involved in that process very much. We have people from outside, consultants, who are looking at the process and look how we should develop it. But for the situation now, I think it's the best what we know. We always can better, but the best what we can know. And I think we don't fail too much with it.
And then a final word from you about looking at South Africa's processes and some of what we could learn from that framework that you apply.
I'm not in a position to really give recommendations on that. I think just because the environment is different, and you just can pick some little things out of that. And also some of our things are it's a longer process. But I think it's not a suggestion, but everybody agrees there should be a proper process, a transparent process, however it is.
Dr. Lebeya, I think, when you mapped out that process that was followed for you, I mean, is the process good enough to produce the kinds of leaders we're looking for, strong enough? And what would your recommendations be in terms of concluding this discussion on how we find the right people in practical terms?
The process of advertising positions is the right one. And then, so the start is perfect. There are sufficient candidates within and outside, because they advertise externally. It means that they are not only looking for those in the police, even those who are outside, who have got the relevant experience, who have been in the police, can still apply. So for me, I'm satisfied with the advertisement. And then there is a lot of candidates there. When I left the DPCI, the major generals, which is the next layer, had more than 277 years of combined experience. Some of them as individuals had more than 40 years in the detective environment. So for me, there is a sufficient pool that we can get from. The process might need to be enhanced elsewhere, but it can still produce the desired results. The only thing is that you have got the minister will chair the panel, and it is the minister who will go and convince cabinet and say that this is the candidate
Mm.
that I'm bringing. It is where I would have loved to separate the powers. That can you have a separate selection panel
Mm.
which shall do that spade work and bring the recommendation to the minister, and the minister can then take it further. They don't normally recommend one person. They will indicate in terms of maybe priority, this is the second. If this one is not coming right, this one and this one.
Mm.
And that can be taken further. But I'm convinced that whoever shall have applied there, they will find suitable candidates who are committed, who have got the relevant security clearances that can take the directorate further. Obviously, I can't say that take from within, but those who are within means that they have been learning all the time. So you don't have to come and train them again. They know. Because if you look at the directorate itself, all the provinces are running.
Mm.
And those provincial heads is part of the pool that you have, and say that, can we also look at some of them? There are leaders holding component head positions at head office.
Mm.
They are available to come and participate and say that maybe we can contribute. There is the deputy. The deputy has been there, seen everything that we do. So for me, I am convinced that if this selection process can be concluded, they can find a suitable, committed candidate to take this the directorate forward.
Yeah. And Lawson, did you want to add around the, whether our processes will achieve the outcomes, assuming that we get the president to move the process forward in terms of the NPA?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've all said and agreed that the processes need to be formalized. Whether in legislation or elsewhere, they do need to be formalized for all of these law enforcement agencies. And perhaps, and it's amazing, we've been talking for an hour and we haven't mentioned the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry yet.
Yeah.
But maybe, submissions need to be made to Justice Madlanga to tackle this issue of the appointment of the senior leadership in law enforcement agencies. But I just want to end with one example, which is not from the law enforcement space, but it's quite instructive because it's a Chapter 9 institution where the process is very clearly set out in the Constitution. And this is the Electoral Commission.
Okay.
And has a different appointment process to other Chapter 9 institutions. They're a panel that is chaired by the Chief Justice and comprising the heads of some of the other Chapter 9s, the Public Protector, the Gender Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and so on. They constitute a panel that call for nominations or applications. They do the shortlisting, they do the interviews in public, and then they are required to make recommendations to Parliament, to the National Assembly. And this happened just in the last couple of weeks, where they completed that. And the letter that goes to the Speaker contains 8 names to fill 3 vacancies.
Yeah.
But when you look at that letter, the panel raised serious issues about some of those candidates. I mean, I'd go as far to say on some of those candidates, the issues raised are scathing, and yet they are still being recommended for appointment. So, you can have a good process, but you don't necessarily get a good outcome.
Yeah. Okay, with that, let's just open up the floor for questions and comments. I want to just briefly read some of the comments that have come through as you think about your questions there. Hannes van Vieren, hi Hannes, says, get the vetting standards right. He's quoting Archbishop Desmond Tutu here when he said, we just need to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they are falling in the first place. And he talks about the biggest reason for civil servants falling in the river is because they never underwent a decent, high standard vetting process. The SIU has from inception made effective use of technology such as a system he's mentioning here to undertake voice stress analysis through phone call interviews. This cancels out any potential for candidates where and where they pick up red flags. So he's talking about vetting processes. Obviously, there are a whole range of other processes such as lifestyle audits and a whole range of those things that can be used in appointment processes. Hand up. Do you want to Sue? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Ezekiel Kikano from the Health Assessment Foundation. I've got a question to Mr. Naidu. Should we not talk about taking the powers of the president to appoint, senior positions like your National Police Commission and have a panel that will not make recommendation, but will have the powers to appoint? Should we not follow that system of taking the president powers from appointing? And then the second question to Dr. Lebeya. On the ground level, do we have skilled police officers? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Let me see if there are any other questions in the room before we take those. Go on.
Well, thank you very much. It's David Minico, Chester, Oh, my question is regarding even yesterday we saw when Premier was launching the Nazis filing. So, but now I would like to understand, are we just ticking the boxes or the faces, but are we coming with people who have strategies to solve the crime? Because the crime is continuing to be exacerbated every day of our lives in the country. Or, yeah, like for instance, this other Department of Planning and Monitoring Evaluation, we saw when America, they built up a department yesterday, Department of Government Efficiency. So us as well ticking boxes, are we ticking faces or are we ticking people coming strategies as a national determined contribution? Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. So you're asking, are we actively trying to select people who have a strategy for addressing crime? Is that the question? And is that part of the selection process? So Lawson, the first question first, and then we can talk about the others.
Yeah, on the first question, look, I mean, I have difficulty with that because I know, somebody has to make the appointment. I have no problem with the president making the appointment. To have some sort of panel making the appointment, I have an issue with, because where's the accountability chain then? In terms of how do you hold that panel accountable for the appointments that they made? So I'm not sure that that's the right thing. I think we need to focus on the whole of the process, as Dr. Lebeya said, starting from what the advertisement for the position, what the criteria are, so the criteria is clear, who whatever the panel is that is there for that particular process. Ultimately, if it's an appointment that's made by Parliament or the President, I'm happy with that. But we must get the whole of the process right, not just look at one aspect of it. On the issue of, are we looking for people with that sort of, yes, you need to have strategic insight, but again, it needs to be clear that policy is set by the government. So, a National Police Commissioner to come in, ahead of the DCI to kind of their own policy perspectives. That's the responsibility of the state, of government. Going through Parliament and discussions and all of that. You need somebody who's going to implement effectively and not in a tick box way, to implement effectively, but within that policy framework. So I think just need to be a little bit careful there, that we don't want to be attracting mavericks into these positions.
Attracting mavericks. Okay, so there was a question for you. Could you just repeat that section of the question, please?
Do we have skilled police officers on the ground who can keep us safe? Because I'm worried that we talk about at the high level, but on the ground, do we have those police officers who have the skills to keep us safe?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think that the answer will be yes. What you need is sufficient numbers. So if you look at as I indicated, if you look at the country's prisons, correctional services facilities, all of them are full. And these individuals do not, I take it from other statements, they do not volunteer to walk to those institutions. It means that somebody else have done that work to secure their presence to become inmates. So work is being done, but the question is it enough? That is where you will hear people saying that, but it seems that you are protecting this area. This one is vulnerable, does not have sufficient resources. You'll say that the sector police, here you have got one van patrolling villages in the rural area. And then in some cities, you have got sufficient patrol cars, some CPF even supplement and the like. So we have got sufficient experience police officials. It's just the number that, of course, you have got new recruits that every time you bring the new layer, they shall still need more experience. They work with others. But I'm convinced that we have got experienced, skilled police officers on the ground who are doing the work. They must just be supported by the public again, because police alone, you can find that one police can actually do a lot if supported by the community. But if the community do not support, an individual police will struggle to actually arrest an individual suspect. But obviously the police is just there in front of society. It's just a blue wall protecting society against criminals. So if society understands that, let's support this police official, and then we will be able to win. So my short answer is that we have got skilled police officials. The number may not be sufficient, but we also need to support them and even protect them against attack.
Thank you for that. I see one hand up. Bernard, you want to add to that?
If I may, can I
Yes,
say
go
something
ahead.
about the strategy? Since the politicians, of course, they have all the responsibility. They have about the resources, about the staff, about everything, but they are not the law enforcement professionals. So we can't wait for them to give us a strategy. And what our goal is, and what sometimes more, sometimes less, that we create the strategies and we propose it to the politicians, and then they agree and they implement it or they don't. But we can't, even if they have the responsibility, we can't wait and say, what shall we do? Because they are not the professionals. So there are more and more. If you have a minister for a longer time, they know more. But most are not law enforcement professionals, and they rely on us to have a strong voice, them consulting them, and then they decide, and then we have to carry it out. But it doesn't come from the politicians, the law enforcement strategy itself, like the framework, the general thinking about law enforcement. For the strategy, the single strategy, the operative strategy, we have to consult them, we have to propose to them. So this is also our responsibility, not just do what we are said, but create solutions.
I see. And Sean Mavundla, I think you've had your hand up online for a while. Do you want to ask your question?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the moderator, Cheryl, Frank, and thank you to the panelists for their incredible insights and suggestions. And I just wanted to preface my question with some of the sentiments that were raised by the panelists. And something that Mr. Lawson talked about is that we need leadership and managerial skills. Those are the kinds of skill sets that leaders need to possess. And then Dr. Godfrey Lebeya spoke about how we need to ensure that we have a thorough system that vets people and we get people into positions that have the qualification and relevant experience. And then something that Bernard mentioned is the point on transparency. And then to echo what you also said as the moderator, Cheryl, is that we need to have leaders that are capable, trustworthy, and accountable. Now, I agree with everything that was said. But part of the issue that I think is in the past, we had a problem of not having people in positions with all these skills that we've outlined. And then currently, there have been people that have been appointed to positions that possess these requisite skills. But still, we have dysfunctional government departments. We still have dysfunctional institutions. Now, what I think is part of the problem is that we have inculcated an organizational culture of impunity, of corruption, and unaccountability. Now, my question is, how do we then uproot this inculcated culture of corruption? And an example to underpin my point is the current crisis that is unfolding in the police. We have kingpins, we have ringleaders, we have syndicates that are now being revealed to be in communication with the higher ups in our police force. That signals a culture of corruption that has gripped our police force. And my question is, how do we then uproot that kind of culture despite having leaders that possess these skills that we all agree they should have?
For sharing their insights.
Tell everybody who you are, Cheryl.
Okay, I'm Shirley Mahano, and I'm from the National Prosecuting Authority. So, General Lebeya and Mr. Naidu made mention about the two processes that were followed in the appointment of the head of the DPCI and the current head of the NPA. And both of them, they've got their own benefits. And then we heard that the legislation amendment has been delayed for the process of the NPA, the succession of the current NPA head. And my question is really, having made that observation, is do we as South Africans embrace a culture of having learning organizations, learning from the good practices of the past that we can take into the future? And the second question is, do we also embrace in the public service the succession planning approach? And if we do not, what is it that is preventing us from doing that? What is it that is preventing us from learning from the private sector? Because the private sector seeks to be excelling in this area.
Thanks, Shirley. Those are useful questions. I want to go first to Sean's question because I think it relates to something we've spoken about as well, which is we need to have conversations not only about appointments processes, but also removals processes, because Sean talks about the culture of impunity for corruption, the need for accountability, and so on. And removals processes that are legitimate and illegitimate. So could you reflect on that, Lawson, particularly in relation to police and the end?
Yeah. I think we can't talk about an appointment process with also talking about the end process, the removal, dismissal, and so on. And I think we've seen examples of this in our past in South Africa. You look back at Lucy Piccoli as the NDP was suspended, went through a process. I was part of that process at the General Inquiry. He was found to be fit and proper to hold the position. Yet it went to Parliament and Vusi was removed. So you have a process, the inquiry, Dr. General says he's fit and proper. Vusi still gets removed. Then we had another example, what was it, 10 years ago. The head of IPID, Robert McBride, was being removed by the Minister of Police. A matter that went all the way to the Constitutional Court. CASAC was an amicus in that case. We provided expert evidence in the form of an associate of the ISS, David Bruce, did an expert opinion on us, for us rather. So we need to look at those processes because those are politically driven processes that remove to that. So we spoke earlier about the political influence in the appointment, but we've also got to look at the political influence in the dismissals of people. But I think the question around this culture of impunity is an important one because we've known for years that despite all of the good work that the SAPs do, and Dr. Lebeya has spoken about that, and we should not underestimate the good work. But we also know that there are lots of police officers that are corrupt. We know that. And the question is, what have we done to deal with that systemically? Now, when you see at the very top of the institution people that are accused of corruption, that's going to permeate down. People lower down are going to feel that they can get away with it, this culture of impunity. But then the other question that we then have to ask is IPID adequately equipped to deal with it? Because the Independent Police Investigating Directorate is there precisely to do this. Has it been effective? And if it hasn't, what do we need to do to fix that? So, an important question. But I think, it's something that, again, I think the Malanga Commission is going to have to reflect upon. Not suggesting that we simply sit back and wait for them. We must be part of that process of making sure that we come up with the right answers. On Shirley's question, it's a point I made earlier. We need to have this culture of growing people within institutions, because by doing that, you strengthen the institution. It's not just about the individual; it's about strengthening the actual institution. I think the MPA is a really good example of that. When you need to have this culture of growth, of culture of respect amongst colleagues, of a healthy working environment where you're all not always suspicious and looking over your shoulder at what you're doing and who's saying what about what you're doing. Somebody mentioned team building, team ethic that needs to be developed there. So I think you're absolutely right, Shelley, on all of those issues. And it needs, leaders need to come in and deliberately make sure that those things happen. They don't just happen organically. They've got to be driven.
I think the question, and maybe you could address this, Dr. Lebeya, about succession planning. It seems to be a misnomer within government. There is no general career pathing, and it's an issue raised also online by Hannes van Vieren again, is this question of there does not seem to be strong career pathing so that you can bring people into leadership positions. Lawson, if you have you have an appointment process where the president makes the appointment, then there is no succession planning in that respect, unless it's in the president's head. But the institution can't plan for succession, strictly speaking. So I wonder if you could reflect on that, and then Lawson again about, and Bernard also, if you could think about this, is how do we bring people through the ranks? And is government doing that well enough? Career pathing, succession planning.
Yeah, I think that there is still a lot to be done with regard to this succession plan and career pathing. The debate itself is well known in these organizations. I remember in the police, in the detective service, There was time when I was the Deputy National Commissioner, we developed a career path for the detectives from station level up to a higher level. And it was also tabled in Parliament and the like. People were comfortable with the proposal. But you know that there is a lot of challenges as to what are the expectations and the like. Some people want to be detectives and nothing else.
Mm.
They don't want to be commanders, but they also want to be growing so that you don't enter the system as a constable and retire as a constable.
Mm.
But you also want to continue to do work. So we drafted a proper career path of the detectives, which is something that is not everybody who is in support of that. The succession plan is something that I know that's been debated from far back in 2000. The best way of doing that is obviously to train a big pool of individuals that to succeed, you have got to be moving step by step. So if you want to be saying that I want to consider filling the position of National Commissioner, can't you look at this layer below of lieutenant generals instead of going for another sergeant and say that, but this sergeant maybe will be able to do. He may be good as a sergeant, but once you move him to go to the National Commissioner's position, you may find that you have jumped several steps and then at least you overloaded his mental capacity to be able to handle all the challenges that come with these high-ranking positions. So, indeed, we have got to be embracing the culture of learning. You learn by growing. I think that there are also debate about going back to some of the practices of the past, which you knew that you become a sergeant, a warrant officer, and the like. You don't automatically move from sergeant and then tomorrow you are a brigadier elsewhere, or from a shop. I don't want to mention the name of the shops. And then you are a general. And people expect that you have got all of those skills. There are dark corners that you can't even get this training from a university. You will learn by experience, by operating within. So I shall say that there is a need to develop career pathing properly. And then there is also a need to look at the succession plan without creating an impression that succession plan is to try to single out certain people and favor them at the expense of others. So that's why you need to build a pool so that they don't criticize you and say that, but when this one leaves, this one is the one who succeeds. They are grooming this one to take over. Then the system itself becomes unfair. So, yeah, those are some of the things that I think they can be developed, debated, and then it becomes part of the policy that the government can look at. There were other questions that one would have loved to touch on, the issue of corruption, that there is the issue
Please
of
go ahead on that.
impunity. No, I think that if you look at the individuals that have been dealt with when it comes to corruption, you ask yourself, which layer was left untouched in trying to deal with their corruption? For me, I have seen the politicians, government officials, the police officials, the soldiers, the prosecutors, the judges, the magistrate, everyone that needed to be dealt with has been visited. It's just that it is a continuous process. You'll find that the others will say that, but you have only dealt with that one, you are leaving the others. Whereas the system is still grinding to that. We have generals that have been sentenced to imprisonment. The other one last year was sentenced to 10 years. Is still inside. We have from the Hawks senior officers, including brigadier, charged together with the captains that they were operating with. We have got prosecutors that have been charged. I think that some of them were charged together with police officials. Or you can speak of any layer. Politicians, high-ranking politicians, obviously we can't talk about the names, but I think if you follow the news, you'll see that they are appearing. They have got to answer. It may not be sufficient. You still need to correct the areas that slow down the process of reacting. But otherwise, generally, I think that they are trying their best. The issue of the dealing with organized crime, what I need people to understand is that there are different approaches when you deal with organized crime. There is conventional method of dealing with organized crime. Most of those is known how to investigate and do things in the normal way. But when you deal with organized crime, conventional methods do not always work. That is where you now use the unconventional methods. That's why you also have got things like Section 252A of the Criminal Procedure Act. You have got to get confessions from others. Section 204, some of those involved, you use them as witnesses and the like. And some will plead on their charges so that they come and testify against their fellow criminals. So dealing with kingpins is not as simple as dealing with an ordinary assault where you know so-and-so is the one who have assaulted me. And this is how we deal with that. Thanks.
I need to start closing up this discussion. It's been interesting. A final word from you, Bernard, on any of these topics, particularly that succession planning one. Any
That's the last one, succession planning. I think it's key for an organization that you have a vision of you where you can go, what you can adjust, and it's key for the individual. It's key for the organization, and at the end, it's key to produce source of leadership. And if you are too long in the same rank, you don't develop yourself. And also, just an example from my experience within leadership, you can't jump in German, Bavaria, you can't jump 5 steps. You have to go step by step, and you learn more. You get experience, and very often, when I was in a situation and I was, I don't know, 55 or 56, or I very often thought, oh, thanks God, I haven't been in that situation when I was 40. Yeah. Even if I had the university and everything, but you really grow with what you are challenged with. Yeah. And this is very important.
Awesome. Final thought?
Yeah, no, I mean, on the succession planning, it's critically important, as I said, not just for the individuals concerned, but for the institutions, building sustainable institutions, strong, sustainable institutions. We, there needs to be constant training and development. We need to be benchmarking ourselves against international best practice. Dr. Lebeya spoke about methods of dealing with organized crime. This is a global phenomenon. It's not just South Africa that's dealing with this. How are other police forces around the world dealing with that? Those are the sorts of things that need to become second nature in our institutions, not seeing that as a threat, to them, but rather helping them to grow and build. So, there are huge learnings, but it's a culture shift, I think, that's necessary. Got to start at the top in terms of creating these learning organizations that need to be ongoing in what they do.
Thanks very much. So I would like to close this conversation. We've settled on many things, but I think many of these issues we've spoken about before, but key points for action right now are we are going to make some recommendations to Judge Mdlanga's a big opportunity for us. We certainly need to be taking cognizance of previous commission's recommendations and not forget that we had very intense recommendations that still have to be implemented, including that have emerged on the appointments processes in the NPA, the independence of the NPA, a range of those issues. We do need something immediate to be done around the National Director appointment in the NPA and the Deputy National Director appointments. We also need to be considering whether our processes are giving us the leaders we require, the types of leadership we need, and continuing to ask that question. I want to stop there and not rehash the whole seminar, but thank you all for being here, for being on the panel. Very much appreciated. Dr. Lebeya, Bernard, Edgar, Lawson Naidu, and all of you for being here in the room and online. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time. Thanks.